UFC Jacksonville, Emmett vs Topuria. These are the full card predictions and fight breakdowns. I'm going to be going through all the fights on the card, starting with the prelims, going to the main event, and giving my prediction and breakdown of every single fight on the card. Starting off with the prelim opener, Sedriques Dumas versus Cody Brundage. I'm going to be picking Cody Brundage in this fight. I think he's a much better grappler than Dumas, and I think he's going to have a big advantage in the grappling, as well as the strength and the cardio as well. I think Dumas's last fight against Josh Fremd, his UFC debut, really just showed he was not up to par in the grappling or the cardio department. He's got, from what we've seen, he's basically got striking, and that's it. He was undefeated going into his UFC debut, had a bit of hype behind him, but he really kind of got fraud checked by Josh Fremd, who is not a top level fighter in the middleweight division, and didn't look good for him at all. So I'm going to be picking Brundage with relative confidence. If you look at his record, coming off a two-loss streak, but if you look at those losses, Adolfo Vieira, Mikhail Oleksiejczuk, not bad losses to have at all. He's got some good wins in there. Beat Dacilia and Gabula in the first round. Got some other good first round finishes in there as well. And I think he's going to have a vast grappling difference and more experience in the UFC to help him get this one done by maybe a submission. Whatever the odds are on that submission decision, you could just go money line on this fight. But Brundage is a moderate favorite, I believe. But he's a good parlay piece in my opinion. But if you want to leave it, that's fine. I just don't have much confidence in Damas's grappling after his UFC debut. But moving on to the second fight on the card, Tatsuro Taira versus Kleydson Rodrigues. I'm going to be picking Tatsuro Taira as the prospect on the come up. Kleydson Rodrigues is also a prospect in his own right, but I believe Taira appears to be the more promising prospect in my eyes and many other people's eyes. And he really, again, with the Brundage fight as well, shows a grappling advantage over Kleydson Rodrigues. This is another fight, grappler versus striker. Tatsuro Taira showed dominant grappling and submissions in his first few UFC fights. Young fighter, 23 years of age, fighting out of Japan, and really looks to be the next prospect fighting out of Asia, coming out of that region there. Haven't had a prospect out of Japan in quite a while, and Tatsuro Taira does look that he's going to be that guy in the flyweight division. Kleydson Rodrigues, also a prospect in his own right, looked very good in his last fight against Shannon Ross. Got a quick finish in a round in the first minute, I believe, spinning all over the place, landing some crazy shots, rocking Shane Young, and finishing him in the first round with some good attacks. But I just think the grappling difference that we've seen from Taira is just vast, and I don't see him losing this fight in the grappling department. I think he's going to get the takedowns quite easily, and I think he's going to submit Kleydson Rodrigues in the second or third round. Rodrigues has shown a bit of a cardio issue in the past, and I think in a grappling-based fight, that really isn't going to help you against a guy like Taira, who's a real grappling prodigy here, and really looks to be very prominent in the grappling, slick with the submissions as well. Not bad striking at all. So yeah, Shannon Ross, but not a guy. Shannon Ross, so not Shane Young. Shannon Ross, Kleydson Rodrigues just beat, but with Taira, I just think he's at that stage in his career young. Both of them are quite young, but I'm just going to be backing Taira in the grappling. I prefer in a grappling versus striker matchup, unless you're seeing the striker with really good takedown defense and cardio, which I haven't really seen from Kleydson Rodrigues, then I think it's a safe pick to pick the favorite here in Taira, who's got the grappling advantage. And I think he could be competitive on the feet, but he's going to be taking it to the ground, and I think he'll win by a submission as well. So I'm picking two submissions to start off the card. But moving on up the card, Jamall Emmers versus Jack Jenkins. Been going back and forth on this one. When I gave my reaction to this fight in one of my fight announcement videos a few weeks back, I initially picked Jack Jenkins. Those fights there that I was predicting was just going over them very quickly. I'd obviously got the main ones out of the way, and I was just kind of scrolling through Big Marcel looking and saying, oh yeah, probably this guy will win. And I did say Jack Jenkins would win, but I've looked into it a little bit more, and I'm going to be picking Jamall Emmers to win this fight by a decision. If you look at his record, he's got some really good names on there. A split decision loss to Giga Chikadze really stands out. Fought Corey Sanhagen, fought Yusuf Zalal. He's got some really good opponents on his record. And while not all wins, he really does appear to be a really good fighter and probably in that 20 to 25, maybe 30 range in the featherweight division. Could have a potential to be ranked in the future. If he wins this fight, probably another fight, and then he could get into the rankings. Jack Jenkins, promising prospect out of Australia, young guy fighting out Bacchus Marsh. Looked really good in his last fight against Don Chanis at UFC 284 in Perth, which I was at. Crowd was going crazy for him. He won the decision, didn't get a finish. As with his debut as well, fought well, not extremely impressive or a knockout in spectacular fashion, but that's not what you really needed in a debut. But I just think looking at this fight, I just think Jamall Emmers is just better on the feet, longer, rangier, and I think he's going to have the striking advantage and just have that experience to cruise his way to a decision. It's going to be a tough fought fight, but I'm picking Emmers by a 29-28, maybe split decision, but I think he'll get it done on the scorecards. Moving up the card, Trevor Peak versus Jose Mariscal. Again, I've been going back and forth on this pick. It's a really tough fight to predict. Grappler versus striker again. Trevor Peak, wild guy on the feet, fights like almost a street fighter, throws like hammer fists standing. Mariscal, very good takedowns, good grappling. Hasn't fought in the UFC yet. This is his UFC debut, but he does have some high level fights, high level wins as well outside the UFC. He's fought Pat Sabatini, which is a really notable win that he beat coming off that. And that's really promising. Pat Sabatini just fought last weekend against Lucas Almeida, which I picked Sabatini to win. And so as a UFC, coming into your UFC debut, to have a Pat Sabatini level fighter, or Pat Sabatini on your record, with that level of grappling that Sabatini's just shown, and for Mariscal to beat him, I really think that shows that he's a real legit grappler and a threat in this matchup. But Trevor Peak, wild striker, power for days, saw it in the debut, got that first round knockout, vicious knockout on an Apex card earlier in the year in February. And he's fighting for the second time. Mariscal's fighting his UFC debut, but it's not like Mariscal hasn't fought quality fighters and he's fighting just cans. Um, so it's really tough to predict. I'm gonna pick, I'll pick Mariscal. I might make a really late change on Saturday, maybe when or Friday if you're in America watching this. But Saturday in Australia after the weigh-ins, maybe if I see anything, or if I just think about it more and want to side with Trevor Peak, I'll put out the full card, like just the card picks with all my picks circled, on my story on my Instagram, Left Lane MMA. I'll put that out on Saturday before the card, with any finals changes just to confirm. But my initial pick in this matchup is going to be Mariscal through the grappling with the takedowns. Um, haven't seen Trevor Peak defend a hell of a lot of takedowns. He is 8-0, I believe, with one no contest. So undefeated, all knockouts as well, 8 KOs. So that's quite crazy to see. Most of them in the first and second round. So we haven't seen him really go long, test the grappling. Obviously, one fight in the UFC got that quick knockout. Not a high level opponent, not an opponent at the level of a Sabatini, or definitely not a Mariscal or anyone like that. So I have, just because I haven't seen the takedown defense, it might be there, but I'm gonna pick Mariscal. Um, but a really close fight here as the fourth fight on the card. So moving on, Zhalgas Zhumagulov versus Joshua Van. I'll be picking Zhalgas Zhumagulov here by decision. I think it's about time he gets a win. He's had a tough run in his career. Really been getting done over by the judges a bit hard. He got slightly robbed by Charles Johnson. A lot of people thought he won that fight. Lots of split decision losses, lots of decision losses on his record. 14-8 doesn't look too impressive compared to the 7-0 of Joshua Van, which is all finishes. So you could look at that on paper and be like, oh, Van's got all the finishes, he's going to finish Zhumagulov, who doesn't have a great record. But if you really look into his record, he could be at this point 17-5 or 18-4, 19-3, and then that's looking like a much better record. If like those decisions went his way, which a few of them definitely should. So I'll be picking Zhalgas with the experience. Joshua Van making his UFC debut, fighting out of Myanmar, in Asia. Real Muay Thai kind of background over there. All finishes, all KOs, I believe. Maybe a few submissions in there, but he just hasn't just without the UFC experience and the veteran savviness of Zhumagulov and the amount of time he's been in the UFC, looking to get back on a win, um, and turn back a prospect or undefeated fighter in Joshua Van. So I think he's going to win on the scorecards. Hopefully, for his sake, doesn't get robbed again. Would not surprise me if we saw a Joshua Van knockout. Very dangerous striker, obviously, as his record would suggest. But I'll be going with Zhalgas in that matchup. Moving on, Tabatha Ricci versus Gillian Robertson. I'll be picking Gillian Robertson here by a late submission, maybe a decision though. In this matchup, you really kind of look at the opponents and also the skill level. Tabatha Ricci coming off that win over Jessica Penne, not a very high level opponent. Gillian Robertson also not a hell of a lot of high level opponents as well, but she really has shown in her last few fights and also that grappling match with Rose Namajunas that she won by submission in the first minute. Um, she's really showed that level of grappling and strength as well. Moving down to the strawweight division, 115 pounds coming from flyweight. It's much more of a dominant physical force in that division as well. The last fight on the Holloway versus Allen card, very impressive. Got a submission in a fight that a lot of people picked her to lose. And I think that's really woken me up as well. I did actually pick her to lose that fight. But I think that's woken me up and a lot of other people up to the fact that she's a legit grappler. Got a few losses on the record, but nothing that would suggest that she can't compete with anyone. And I don't think Tabatha Ricci is the highest level opponent, not a massive, huge step up from her last fight. So I'll be picking I'll be picking Robertson to win through the grappling, through the strength, and the physical prowess that she possesses over Ricci, in my opinion. Moving on, Mataeusz Rabecki versus Loik Radzhabov. I'll be picking. Who will I be picking? This is another tough fight. A few good fights on this card that I've had to really think about picking. I'll be going with Mataeusz Rabecki. I was leaning Radzhabov a little bit. It looked very impressive in his last fight against Esteban Ribovic. Hurt Ribovic. Got some takedowns. Looked very impressive and dominant in that fight on the Jones versus Garn card in March. But Rabecki's got a really impressive record on his own right as well. 16 or 17 and 1, I believe. Only one loss on that record. And fought some pretty high level opposition as well. I think he's going to be better than Radzhabov on the feet. And I think he's got underrated takedown defense, which I think he's going to show in this fight. Obviously, Radzhabov with the OV could be suggesting you might be led to believe that he's a very dominant grappler. He obviously does have takedowns, got them in his last fight, looked good in the grappling, but certainly not the prowess or grappling of a Khabib or an Umar or an Islam Makhachev. None of those guys. Fighting out of Tajikistan, so he's not even from that Dagestan area. The OV in this one, I'm not going to be picking him. An uncommon occurrence from a lot of people, so I think he's being picked quite heavily in this matchup. But I'm going to be going with Rabecki by probably a decision. Would not surprise me though if he got a KO or a TKO. I think he's really quick on the feet, and I think he's going to surprise Radzhabov with his speed and really come out there looking quick and fast and a lot more crisp on the feet with the boxing and the kicks than a Loik Radzhabov. So I'm picking him to win this fight by a late TKO or a decision. Um, Moving up the card, Randy Brown versus Wellington Turman. I'm going to be picking Randy Brown by a TKO or maybe a clean knockout. The striking difference in this matchup is just so clear. Randy Brown's just shown really good striking in his last few fights. Last coming off that submission loss to Della Maddalena, realistically it was pretty much a TKO. Got dropped badly in that fight, but that's Jack Della Maddalena, not a bad fighter, upcoming prospect out of Western Australia, and looks really good and is now in the rankings. So that loss for um, Randy Brown really doesn't look too bad on his resume. Look through his other fights, got a win over Chaos Williams, another good win. Fought some pretty high level opposition, no one ranked, but some good opponents, and he looks really good. And the range in this matchup is going to be a big thing, I think. Randy Brown, very long, reachy, rangy guy, poppy with his shots, and was even looking good against Jack Della Maddalena, obviously, before he got KO'd. So you can't really use that because wasn't throwing a whole lot, but he was giving him some brief problems with the range. He was popping him a little bit with that reach advantage. He's got a massive reach. It's like high 70s, I believe. Turman's isn't that high certainly, but he's coming down from the middleweight division, so expect him to be looking to win this fight through the grappling and through the strength that he's going to be looking to get via cutting down the 15 pounds. His fights, I'm looking at his record. Most notable one coming off that pretty dominant loss to Andre Petrosky, who's booked to fight Gerald Meerschaert. So in that fight, like Petrosky's a good fighter, but when you're getting dominated in the grappling, I'm not gonna refer to you or trust you as a dominant or forceful grappler that's gonna run through a Randy Brown. I think Brown's got some ability to get back up from the feet as well with those long arms, get those whizzes, get the legs around, and just get up via awkwardness as well. Maybe like Adesanya style as well with that takedown defense. So I'm gonna be picking Randy Brown to win. He's got dangerous striking, not a heap of power, but I think he's really gonna be popping at Turman from range, and I think he's gonna hurt him and get a finish in the second or third round. So I'm picking him to win this fight. Um, Moving on to the prelim headliner, Neil Magny versus Phillip Rowe. I'll be picking Neil Magny in this fight. The veteran savviness is just too much to ignore. He's been around the sport for ages, had so many looks against pretty much everyone in the welterweight division. The most fights, I believe, in the welterweight division. I think ahead of GSP, yeah. Last fight, got smoked by Gilbert Burns. But as Gilbert Burns is a top level fighter, Phillip Rowe, same thing would happen to him. Before that beat, it was Daniel Rodrigues, which was very impressive, beat him by a submission. He's got wins over guys like Jeff Neal as well. Like you look at his record, and although there's a lot of losses there, the losses the high level competition, like Shove Cut loss, Burns loss, those aren't bad losses to have whatsoever. So I think Phillip Rowe as well. I think he's coming off the win over it was Nico Price, I believe. Won in that fight. Looks good, but I think there's a level, and Neil Magny's going to be that gatekeeper to the top 15, and I don't think Phillip Rowe's going to pass the test right now. Could catch Magny. Not the most powerful guy in the welterweight division. But I think Magny's just so well rounded. Everyone just got this weird ability to just be good. Like he doesn't look good. He'll get smoked in an area, and you'll be like, okay, he's a shit grappler or he's a shit striker. But then the next fight wins by submission, Darce choke against Daniel Rodrigues, and you're like, okay, well he's good. So it's just a weird kind of thing with Magny. You can really never gauge where he's at in that division. Hasn't lost much to that unranked guys. He's always been sitting in that 10 to 15 kind of spot, and I expect him to keep his ranking here against Phillip Rowe. Um, Rowe showed, yeah, good striking in the Nico Price fight, I believe it was, in his last fight on that UFC Orlando card in last December. But he just hasn't shown any kind of dominance or any ridiculous ability to be better than his opponent in any areas beyond belief. And none of his opponents that he's got wins over, I believe, are better than Neil Magny. I think this is the highest caliber of opposition that Phillip Rowe's fought, and I expect that to show in this matchup. And I think Magny's going to win just a decision by just being weirdly good and just finding ways to just outclass and outpoint Phillip Rowe everywhere. So I'm going to be picking Magny to win a decision in this fight. Um, Moving up to the main card, the main card opener, Brendan Allen versus Bruno Silva. Really good middleweight fight to start off this main card, an exciting matchup, clash of styles, most would call it. And I'm going to be picking Brendan Allen to win in this fight. That being said, there's a 35% chance, I'd say, that Bruno Silva does chin him. Um, that's the real danger in this fight, is that Allen rushes in or gets scrappy with Bruno Silva and tries to fight on the feet with him, which is not his way to win. Tries to fight on the feet with a Bruno Silva and just gets chinned by that power. We saw it in Silva's last fight, got that KO win over Brad Tavares. And Allen now, coming off the win over Andre Muniz, got a submission, which was very impressive, and he's showing some much improved grappling in his fights and some good striking as well. He was known as a striker for the most part, and then really upped his grappling game, shown in the Muniz fight. Muniz is one of the best jiu-jitsu guys in that middleweight division. But I'm just going to be picking Allen to win. I think he's got some momentum behind him in the rankings now, and I'm going to back him to be smart in this fight and utilize the real path to victory against Bruno Silva in the grappling, like we saw with Gerald Meerschaert, who did it as well, who beat Bruno Silva. So yeah, I think Allen should win this fight by decision. Could get a sub, but I think he's going to end up playing it more safe. I think he'll feel the power once in this fight. I think he'll get rocked. And then after that, I think he'll come to his senses and grapple his way to a decision win, 29-28. Losing a first round, I think he will via getting rocked via Bruno Silva, because he's going to try and strike with him and then quickly realize that's not the way to go in this fight. But I'll be picking Allen to win. But don't bet Allen. I wouldn't tell you to bet Allen. I could. There's not really any safe bets on this matchup. Just with that power that Silva possesses, it's really hard to make a confident bet on that fight. But moving on, to the second fight on the main card, David Onama versus Gabriel Santos. I'll be picking Santos in this matchup, and I think he'll win a decision, maybe a late finish. Um, Onama in his Landwehr fight, which was his most recent fight, I believe. Um, he showed a really good first round, came out dangerous, dropped Landwehr, looked really good, and we're like, he's going to win this fight. It's only a matter of time he'll finish Landwehr. But really gassed out hard trying to get the finish. Was just sloppy everywhere after that first round. Ended up on top in moments, and then Landwehr just managed to sweep him over, and Landwehr ended up in mount, which just wasn't good to see. Landwehr definitely could have finished him in that fight if he wasn't entertaining the fans. He's a legend. Landwehr is. He was standing up from fucking side control and shit, getting the crowd excited. So it was great television to watch. Highly recommend you watch that fight, David Onama versus Nate Landwehr, if you haven't seen it already. It was on the UFC San Antonio card, I believe it was. The Vera versus Cruz, that Vera versus Cruz card. I think it was San Antonio or San Diego, one of those two. But it was the Vera versus Cruz card on the. It was the co-main event and it was a banger. So definitely go watch that fight. Um, as far as Onama goes, again, dangerous striking power and reach um, is what he's going to possess in the first round. But after that first round, I think that goes away. And I think Gabriel Santos, who showed the ability to go long at a good pace against Lerone Murphy in his last fight, I think he's going to win this fight by decision. Maybe a late TKO as well. He really looked good in that Lerone Murphy fight. Lost the fight. I thought he won, even though I picked Murphy. I was like pleasantly kind of surprised to get that pick right when it went to the scorecards. I was like, I've got this wrong. Santos has won. I just gave it to Murphy. Very close fight. Could have given it to Santos very easily. I think it was about a 50, really 50-50 on the scorecards. Kind of whatever you're looking for in the judging criteria. But Santos did look very good in that fight. Um, Not too much UFC experience, I believe, on his end. But he really, really looked good in the striking and the grappling. Showed the ability to go long as well. He was hurt at times. Recovered. He recovers well. Um, Pushes a good pace and went long, which is something I can't say with Onama, who was on wobbly legs just from exhaustion in that second and third round, and basically had to be forced out by his corner. Otherwise, that fight probably could have been stopped. And I think if you put another referee in that cage, it's getting stopped by a different referee who just thinks that those shots that he was taking is too much. So I'll be picking Santos to win a decision. But if Onama does catch him in the first round, that's his best chance to win, and it wouldn't surprise me overly. But once this fight goes into the second and third, I'd be surprised to see Onama get a win. Um, Moving on though to the feature fight, Justin Tafa versus Austin Lane. This got moved up from the prelims. It was swapped with Brundage versus Dumas, and I'm glad it was. It's a very good fight to have on the card. Definitely going to be a KO in my opinion. The thing you kind of look at with like heavyweight fights, um, they either end up being really exciting first round finishes, or they either end up being boring clinch against the cage, dead decisions, which no one enjoys watching, like Augusto Sakai. But with this fight, I think this is a guaranteed knockout waiting to happen. Um, the power that both of these guys possess, um, and I think just the ability why they just go for it so much. Neither of these guys are real grapplers. This is going to be a striking fight, and I think we're more likely to see a finish in a striking fight. And I'm picking picking Justin Tafa to win by first round KO. Um, Austin Lane, I just can't have too much confidence in him. He's one of those NFL rejects, and I've learnt to stop picking them in the sport. Learned it with Braxton Smith against Parker Porter, the guy who Justin Tafa slept in his last fight in the first round in Perth. which I was again at that card. Really exciting to see that from him. But Parker Porter, who is by no means a good fighter in the heavyweight division, he did fight John Jones though, so maybe he is. He's the GOAT in many people's eyes. But I think Tafa's just shown more improvements in his game, and I think he's got more power and a better chin as well to take the shots of an Austin Lane. I just can't. It mostly comes down to I'm never picking an NFL reject in a UFC fight ever again. I've done it before. I picked Braxton Smith, but you can't just pick these guys who just have power and then no cardio. I think Tafa has shown the ability to go a bit longer. He's gone to decision in his career. Um, and just again, Lane hasn't really shown anything good. Got KO'd by Greg Hardy, and I cannot pick you to win a singular fight in your career if you got KO'd by Greg Hardy. I just can't. You can't do it. If someone's picking Lane, I'd love to know your reasons. Let me know in the comments if you are picking Austin Lane in this matchup. Let me know why, and I'll be intrigued to know because I just don't see any way that just a failed NFL player is just going to come in with only power against Justin Tafa, who's got a hell of a chin and power to swing back himself, and I think better technique than Austin Lane. I'm not going to be picking. Not going to be picking Austin Lane to win this fight. I just can't. It's less about Tafa and more about I would honestly not pick Austin Lane against like 95% of the heavyweight division, and that's being generous. I just can't. Maybe he'll win fights, probably. He'll lose this fight by KO in the first round, which I'm picking Justin Tafa to win. He'll lose this fight by first round KO. Probably fight He'll probably fight a fat old grappling heavyweight. Might get a TKO just by catching them, and then he'll lose again. And just he's got no skill. You can't get KO'd by Greg Hardy, bro. Fucking hell. Like, I don't even know why I'm having this conversation when you get KO'd by Greg Hardy. Um, Anyway, moving on. Macy Barber versus Amanda Ribas. I'll be picking Amanda Ribas in this fight by decision. Coming off a really good win in March over Viviane Araújo. Got a finish in that fight, I believe it was. Maybe a decision. Um, but won her last fight against a ranked opponent, against a top opponent who was also coming off a loss to Alexa Grasso, the current champion. Ribas has just shown more skill in her fights than Macy Barber, who appears to now be the queen of split decisions in the UFC. Won her last fight by a split decision against Andrea Lee. I thought she lost. Won a few fights before that again, decision, unanimous, split. I forget a few of each. Lost to Roxanne Modafferi. That's just not a good look to have on your record. So I'm just going to be picking Ribas to be better in this fight everywhere and not get robbed on the scorecards like all of Barber's fights. But I'll just say this, if it goes to the scorecards and it hasn't been a complete domination and 10-8s across the board, then I can't even guarantee the outcome because somehow Macy Barber just keeps winning these fights, um, keeps getting gifted decisions by the judges, and has pretty much made it into the rankings of the flyweight division because of it somehow. But I think she'll lose this fight. I think there's going to be too much of a skill difference. Again, same with Austin Lane and Justin Tafa. I can't pick you to win if you lost to Greg Hardy. I can't really pick you to win a fight against a ranked opponent if you lost to Roxanne Modafferi. It's just not a good look for me in this fight, and I think Ribas has shown really good improvements in her fight. Good striking, really good grappling against Araújo. Looked impressive in that fight, and I'm going to be picking her to win, and then she'll be moving up the rankings and fighting maybe even in the top 5, maybe a Lauren Murphy after this fight. But moving on, so picking Ribas by decision. Moving on to the main event of the evening, Josh Emmett versus Ilia Topuria. Like many people, are we picking Topuria to win by a knockout? I think he'll win by knockout in the first 3 rounds. There's no chance this fight goes the distance. Whatever the line is on this fight, whatever the betting line is on this fight for fight to go the distance, you don't bet it. Fight to not go the distance, doesn't matter if it's fucking plus 1,000. Hammer the line on that shit because this fight is not going to go the distance. There's no way. Josh Emmett, massive power puncher. Ilia Topuria, big finisher in that featherweight division. I just don't see any way that either guy won't get finished. I think there's a chance Josh Emmett catches him. So when I'm picking Topuria, I'm picking him with confidence, but not high confidence. I would not go as far to call him a lock. I don't think you can actually do that reasonably. When you have Emmett in a fight, no one's a lock. I don't care if it's Volk, Holloway, anyone. It doesn't matter how much better they are than him. that power that you have, if you've just got the ability to just knock someone out with one shot, I cannot call you a lock against that fighter. Toporia's been dropped as well. Got dropped by the head kick against Jai Herbert in his second to last fight in London. So it's not like he's shown a granite chin and just can't get dropped by anyone. But I do just think he's just technically superior and also has the power to hurt Josh Emmett back, who also hasn't shown the ability to really weather a storm and take bombs and stuff. Fought competitively with Cater, won a robbery decision, coming off the big TKO loss, or sorry, submission loss to Yair Rodrigues. Got beaten up on the feet in that fight. Again, this is just why there is that worry. Landed big shots on Yair Rodrigues, who's got a granite chin. But I'll be honest, if he lands those shots on Topuria, he could go out. So it is a worrying matchup to be picking Elite Topuria. But I think I have confidence in the technical superiority. The grappling as well looked really good against Bryce Mitchell in his last fight. Got the arm triangle finish. And also just the superiority in the technique of the striking. Emmett is not an extremely technical, talented striker. He's just got power. And when you've just got that much power for days, you can make it to the top of a division. Again, that Cater fight, he's on arguably he's on a 3-loss streak right now. Again, probably could have given that fight to Ige as well. He fought Dan Ige, won another close split decision. Won a close decision against Ige, won a close decision against Cater, lost to Rodrigues by finish, got beaten up in that fight badly with the body kicks. Yair looked really clean in that fight and looked really dominant. So I think Emmett, being 38 or 39 years of age, looks like he's on his way down in that featherweight division. And after this fight, it's just going to be a continuous thread of getting fed to up-and-comers. Losing this fight for Emmett, I could see him being fed to a Giga Chikadze, who, why the fuck hasn't he fought in so long, I don't know. That's a topic for another day, but Giga Chikadze maybe a Movsar Evloev, a grappler. But after this fight, when he loses and it's clear he's out of the title picture, I just don't have confidence that he's going to make a rebound. And at 39 years of age, unless you're Jared Cannonier probably taking EPO, then I don't see him turning his career around at this stage. I think he's going to get TKO'd in this fight by Elias Topuria. I think he's not going to have too much confidence going in. I think he's going to be a bit more gun shy after coming off that beating from Yair Rodrigues that he took. Really got picked apart and just whacked in that fight. Got kicked to the body, kicked in the head. Submitted in that fight in the end. Topuria's got a good grappling base, so I could see a submission for earlier Topuria. But I do see this being a stand-up fight. Emmett's strong guy, got a good base, can probably stuff some takedowns. Haven't seen him be shot on too much, but he's got a solid base, so I expect him to have decent takedown defense. But just against against Ilia Topuria, I just think Ilia is going to be better everywhere. But again, not a high confidence pick. Even if you look at Ilia Topuria's last fight against Bryce Mitchell, was dominant in victory, but did get caught by a few shots in that fight. Bryce Mitchell's got pillow hands, so it wasn't a worry for him. But he was getting cracked in that fight a little bit before he got that finish. So yeah, again, not a lock. The lines on this fight are way too wide. I honestly, even though I'm picking Topuria, you might as well just chuck $5 or $10 on Emmett by KO because he's like a plus 300. So the lines on this fight are ridiculous. They should be like minus 220 for Topuria, plus like 180 or something for Emmett. It shouldn't be like it's minus like 330 for Topuria, which I get is really good. But like he KO'd Damon Jackson, KO'd Ryan Hall, who's shit. He KO'd or submitted Bryce Mitchell, KO'd Jai Herbert up a weight class. So like these are some good wins, but these aren't like Kelvin Cater's, Korean Zombie, Giga Chikadze's. Obviously Emmett hasn't fought those guys. He's fought Cater. And should have lost that fight. But he's not like he's dominating fighters all the way up the rankings. He got into the rankings with that win, I think, over Ludovic. not over Jai Herbert, and then took the number 9 spot from Bryce Mitchell. So he's found himself in a top contender match very, very quickly without that many big fights in the UFC. Like, Damon Jackson's not that good. Ryan Hall's horrendous at fighting. He only knows how to go for M&I rolls. Um, Jai Herbert caught him with a head kick, so that's just not good to see. Like, he's not. I wouldn't call him chinny, but I'd say like he's got the capability to get dropped. He was still getting kneed and stuff. He ducks down a lot. He really does duck down. So I don't think that's as much of a worry against Emmett. Obviously, Jai Herbert's a really tall guy, long and rangy, so he's getting him with those knees up the middle. But Topuria's got a habit of really lunging in when he throws punches and brings his head down. And he was getting caught with those knees up the middle, getting caught with that head kick as well. Really low base against Bryce Mitchell as well. Came out with a really low stance, ready to defend takedowns. Maybe we'll see Emmett shoot on him. I'm not sure. But I still will be picking him. All that being said, I'm picking him to win this fight by a second round. Second round TKO. I think he'll catch Emmett with some big strikes in the first. Emmett will land a big shot towards the end of the round, I think. Emmett looked very gun shy against Jair Rodrigues in the first. Didn't throw like anything through 2 minutes and then just unloaded with a big right and caught him. So I could see Emmett really approaching this fight in a way of like letting Topuria throw a little bit and just trying to catch him because that's his way to win. He just needs to rock him badly with a big shot. I don't see him out. He's not going to out technique Topuria over 25 minutes. I don't think he's going to out grapple him. And I don't see him like putting the pressure on Topuria. So yeah, Topuria should win this fight. And then he'll be ranked, I think, number 5 or 6. And then we should be seeing Topuria versus like a. I don't want to see Max Holloway versus Ilya Topuria because I know that Max Holloway is going to win that fight. As weird as it sounds to say, Topuria is a prospect and stuff, so he could win that fight. But if it's the next big thing, he might win that fight. But it's just this reoccurring theme. Stop fucking giving contenders to Holloway. Like, I get it, you have to give Holloway fights, but like, send him up to lightweight or something. Like, did it with Cater, did it with Rodrigues, I guess, did it with Allen. Like, stop. Volk said it as well. It sounds kind of weird to say, but stop fucking taking away Volk's contenders. Like, he's not gonna fight Volk for a 4th time. No one fucking cares to see that. If you say you care to see that, you're lying. Volk's won like all like Volk's won fucking 13 out of 15 rounds of that trilogy. We don't need to see a 4th fight. That's stupid to say. So when you're not going to see them two fight again, what's the point of doing all these contender matchups with Holloway? Um, I think send Holloway up to lightweight because if Ilya Topuria wins, look, I don't love the idea of giving him a title shot, but if it's title shot against Volk coming off a win over Rodrigues, if he wins that, if it's title shot against Volk or fight Holloway and lose and then just get reset and lose by decision, and then just end up getting reset down the rankings and stuff and having to go back and get more wins, then just give him a title shot against Volk. Like, if Volk wins against Rodrigues and doesn't take a lot of damage, which I think is unlikely, I think the way Yair fights is just designed to make people take damage. But let's say Volk just has the perfect game plan, runs through him with the grappling, doesn't absorb strikes on the feet, and just outclasses Yair, and he can turn, and if he's ready to turn around in September in Australia, just do them two on a co-main event. Um, get Izzy on the main event, and that's a sick card. So it doesn't really matter if it's not the most deserving title shot. Korean Zombie got a title shot against Volk coming off like 1 win, so you can give it to Topuria coming off a win streak and a KO win over Josh Emmett if he gets it. So that's my opinion. Um, in this fight, alternatively, you do like what a Yair Rodrigues maybe, or like an Ortega, I guess. An Allen maybe. Winner gets a title shot. I don't know, but I just think it's not ridiculous to give him a title shot if he wins this fight. So yeah, but that's the whole card done. Let me know what you think of the predictions in the comments. Just recapping really quickly, I'm picking Brundage over Dumas, Taira over Rodrigues, Emmett over Jenkins, Mariscal over Trevor Peak, Zhumagulov over Van, Robertson over Ricci, Rabecki over Radzhabov, Brown over Turman, Magny over Rowe, Allen over Silva, Santos over Onama, Tafa over Lane, Hebos over Barber, and in the main event I am picking Josh Emmett to lose by KO to Ilya Topuria. So Ilia Topuria is going to win that fight, in my opinion. But that's the whole card done. Let me know what you think in the comments. And I'll see you in the next video, which will be a whole card recap of this video. See you guys.